The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and dying flowers. Elton John sat in a plastic chair, his famous glasses folded in his lap, his eyes fixed on the boy in the bed. Ryan White was 18 years old. He weighed less than 90 pounds, and he was dying. It was April 1990, Indianapolis, Riley Hospital for Children. Outside, news vans lined the street. Reporters waited with cameras ready. The whole world was watching Ryan White die, but inside that room there was only silence, only the beep of machines, only two people who had become, against all odds, the closest of friends. Ryan's eyes fluttered open. "Elton," he whispered. His voice was so weak it barely carried across the pillow. "I'm here, buddy." Elton leaned forward, taking the boy's hand. It felt like holding a bird's wing, fragile, breakable. "I'm right here." Ryan tried to smile. Even now, even at the end, he tried to smile. "You look terrible," Ryan said. Elton laughed. It came out wet, broken. "You should see yourself?" "I have. That's why I'm worried about you." 5 years earlier, Ryan White had been just another kid in Kokomo, Indiana. He liked skateboarding, cars, and Michael Jackson. He had hemophilia, a blood disorder that required regular transfusions. He was 13 years old when he found out he was going to die. The blood that was supposed to save his life had been contaminated with HIV. In 1984, AIDS was a death sentence, but it was also something else. It was a scarlet letter, a mark of shame, a disease that good people didn't get. The world had decided that AIDS was punishment, for homosexuality, for drug use, for sin. Ryan White was none of those things. He was a child, an innocent, and that made people even more afraid. When the news spread through Kokomo, the town didn't rally around the sick boy. They didn't bring casseroles or offer prayers. Instead, they did something that would become a stain on American history. They tried to destroy him. Howard. Dylan was the superintendent of Western School Corporation. He was a tall man with a square jaw and the absolute certainty of someone who had never questioned his own righteousness. When Ryan's mother, Jean, tried to enroll her son back in school after his diagnosis, Dylan was waiting. "I'm sorry, Mrs. White," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "But we can't allow Ryan to attend classes. The other parents are concerned." "Concerned about what?" Jean's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "The doctors say he can't spread it through casual contact. He's not a danger to anyone." "That's not what some people believe. Some people are wrong." Dylan leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. White, I have 200 families threatening to pull their children from this school if Ryan attends. I have teachers saying they'll quit. I have parents talking about lawsuits." He spread his hands. "What would you have me do?" "I would have you do the right thing." But the right thing wasn't on Howard Dillon's agenda. The White family fought. They went to court. They won. A judge ruled that Ryan had every legal right to attend school. It should have been the end of the story. Instead, it was just the beginning of the nightmare. When Ryan walked into Western Middle School on February 21, 1986, half the student body stayed home. Parents organized protests outside the building. Someone spray-painted "fag" on the family's car. Someone else fired a bullet through their living room window. Ryan White was 14 years old and his neighbors were trying to kill him. The harassment didn't stop. Restaurants refused to serve the family. A church asked them not to return. Ryan's locker was vandalized so many times the school stopped repairing it. Kids called him "fag" and "AIDS boy" and threw things at him in the hallways. Through it all, Ryan never fought back. He never screamed or cried in public. He just kept going to school, kept doing his homework, kept trying to live whatever life he had left. "I just want to be treated like everyone else," he told a reporter. He was 15 years old. He had already lived more bravery in 1 year than most people manage in a lifetime. The Whites eventually left Kokomo. They moved to Cicero, Indiana, where the community welcomed Ryan with open arms. For the first time in years, Ryan had friends. He had a normal life. He even got a car, a red Chevy Citation that became his pride and joy. But the damage was done. The virus was doing its work, and Ryan White was running out of time. Elton John first heard about Ryan in 1985. He was in the middle of his own destruction. Cocaine for breakfast, vodka for lunch, pills to sleep, pills to wake up, pills to feel nothing at all. He was 40 years old, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he was killing himself as fast as he could. But something about Ryan's story cut through the fog. I saw this kid on television, Elton recalled later. This skinny, little boy with glasses standing in front of cameras defending his right to go to school, and the adults around him, these grown men and women, were treating him like a monster. He paused. I knew what that felt like. Being hated for something you couldn't control. Being told you were diseased, dangerous, less than human. His voice caught. I had to meet him. The first phone call was awkward. Jean White answered. She was used to calls by now. Reporters wanting interviews, activists wanting Ryan as a spokesman, strangers wanting to pray for him or curse him, depending on the day. Mrs. White, this is Elton John. Silence on the line. The singer? Yes? More silence. I don't know if you know my music, but I know who you are, Mr. John. Jean's voice was cautious. Ryan had been used by so many people, turned into a symbol when all he wanted was to be a boy. What do you want? I want to help. If there's anything I can do. Money, publicity, anything. Why? It was a fair question. Elton could have given a dozen answers. Because it was good PR. Because he felt guilty about his own privilege. Because AIDS was devastating the gay community and he needed to be seen doing something. But he told the truth instead. Because I'm terrified, he said. I'm terrified of this disease. I'm terrified of dying. And I watched your son on television and he wasn't afraid. He was 14 years old and facing death and he wasn't afraid. His voice broke. I thought maybe he could teach me something. Jean White was quiet for a long moment. I'll ask Ryan, she finally said. He makes his own decisions. Ryan said yes. The friendship that developed was strange and beautiful and completely unexpected. Elton John, flamboyant superstar, British rock royalty, owner of more sequin jackets than most people own socks, and Ryan White, skinny Indiana kid who liked Nintendo and roller coasters and collecting movie memorabilia. They shouldn't have had anything in common. They had everything in common. Ryan didn't treat me like Elton John, Elton said. He treated me like a person. He teased me about my clothes. He beat me at video games. He told me when I was being a diva. He smiled at the memory. Nobody else in my life did that. Everyone was too afraid of me, but Ryan wasn't afraid of anything. Elton flew Ryan and his family to his concerts. He invited them to his homes in London and Los Angeles. He bought Ryan the sound system he'd always wanted and called him every week just to talk. But it wasn't charity. It wasn't celebrity kindness. It was real friendship, the kind Elton hadn't experienced in years. I needed him as much as he needed me, Elton admitted. Maybe more. I was surrounded by people who wanted something from me. Ryan just wanted to hang out. He wanted to be my friend. In the middle of his own collapse, Elton had found something pure, and it was dying. By early 1990, everyone knew the end was coming. Ryan had beaten the odds for years. Doctors had given him 6 months to live in 1984. He had survived for 6 years, through the lawsuits and the threats and the hatred, through the move to Cicero and the brief normalcy, through dozens of hospitalizations and experimental treatments. But the virus was winning now. His T-cell count was almost zero. His body was covered with sores. He couldn't eat, couldn't walk, could barely breathe. On March 29, 1990, Ryan White was admitted to Riley Hospital for Children. He never left. Elton was in the middle of a tour when he got the call. It was Jean. Her voice was steady in that way that only mothers' voices can be steady when their children are dying. It's time, Elton. If you want to say goodbye. He canceled everything. Concerts worth millions of dollars. Commitments that had been scheduled for months. His manager screamed at him. His record label threatened lawsuits. Elton didn't care. I'm going to Indianapolis, he said. If you want to fire me, fire me. He arrived at the hospital on April 3rd. What he found in that room broke something inside him. Ryan was barely recognizable. The disease had hollowed him out, turned him into a ghost of the vibrant boy Elton had met 4 years earlier. His skin was gray. His eyes were sunken. He looked like he was already gone. But when he saw Elton, he smiled. Nice jacket, Ryan whispered. It was one of their jokes. Ryan always teased Elton about his clothes. I wore it just for you. Elton had to fight to keep his voice steady. It's got rhinestones. Everything you own has rhinestones. Not everything. Some of them have sequins. Ryan's laugh turned into a cough. The cough turned into a wheeze. Machines beeped. Nurses rushed in. And Elton sat there, helpless, while doctors worked to keep a dying boy alive for a few more hours. The days blurred together. Elton stayed in Indianapolis. He slept in hospital waiting. Rooms. He spent hours in Ryan's room, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in silence. Other visitors came and went. Michael Jackson, Phil Donahue, Barbara Bush. But Elton stayed. One night, around 3 a.m., Ryan woke up. The room was dark except for the glow of medical equipment. Elton was in the chair by the bed where he always was. "Elton? I'm here. Can I tell you something?" "Anything, buddy." Ryan's eyes found Elton's in the darkness. Even now, there was no fear in them. There was something else, something that looked almost like peace. "I'm not scared," Ryan said. Elton's throat tightened. "I know. But I'm sad. I wanted to drive my car more. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to—" He trailed off. "There's so much I wanted." "I know," it was all Elton could say. "Can you do something for me?" "Anything. Don't let them forget." Ryan's voice was urgent now, the words coming faster as if he knew he didn't have many left. "Don't let them forget about the other kids, the ones who don't have famous friends, the ones who are dying alone because everyone's too scared to touch them." He gripped Elton's hand with surprising strength. "Use your voice, Elton. You're famous. People listen to you. Use it for something that matters." Elton couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down his face. "Promise me," Ryan said. "I promise." Ryan settled back into his pillow. His eyes started to close. "You know what's funny?" he murmured. "What?" "All those people in Kokomo, they were so scared of me, but I was never dangerous." A ghost of a smile. "I was just a kid who wanted to go to school." His breathing evened out. He slept. Ryan White died on April 8th, 1990. He was 18 years old. Elton was there. Jean was there. Michael Jackson was there. The nurses who had cared for Ryan for weeks were there. They held hands around the bed as the machines went silent, as the boy who had taught America about compassion took his last breath. Outside, the news vans started their engines. In Cicero, church bells rang. Across the country, people who had never met Ryan White cried for a boy they had only known through television screens. But in that small hospital room, there was only silence. And Elton John, sitting in a plastic chair, holding the hand of a dead child, understanding for the first time in his life what truly mattered. The funeral was held on April 11th, 1990, at the Second Presbyterian Church in Indianapolis. Over 2,500 people attended. First Lady Barbara Bush sat in the front row. Celebrities and politicians and ordinary citizens filled every pew, spilled into the aisles, lined up outside the doors. Elton was asked to speak. He stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces. For a man who had performed for millions, who had played stadiums and appeared on television screens around the world, this was the hardest thing he had ever done. "Ryan was a hero," he said. His voice was rough, barely controlled. "Not because he was brave, although he was braver than anyone I've ever known. Not because he fought back, although he fought back every day of his life." He paused. "Ryan was a hero because he showed us what we really are. He held up a mirror to America, and he made us look. And some of us didn't like what we saw." His eyes found Jean in the front row. "He told me near the end that he wanted to be remembered, that he didn't want us to forget about the other kids, the ones dying alone because we're too scared, too ignorant, too cruel to help them." Elton's voice broke. "I promised him I wouldn't forget, and I'm asking all of you to make the same promise. Remember Ryan White, remember what he taught us, and maybe we can become the people he already thought we were." He couldn't say any more. He walked back to his seat, tears streaming down his face, and sat in silence while others spoke. But something had changed. In that moment, standing at the podium of a church in Indianapolis, Elton John made a decision. He didn't know it yet, not fully. The realization would come later, in the dark months ahead. But the seed was planted. Ryan White had given him a mission. Now he had to become someone worthy of carrying it out. 3 months after Ryan's funeral, Elton John checked into a rehabilitation center in Chicago. He had hit bottom. The cocaine, the alcohol, the bulimia, all of it had finally caught up with him. A doctor had looked him in the eye and told him he had 6 months to live if he didn't stop. But it wasn't the doctor's warning that got him into rehab. It was Ryan. I kept thinking about that hospital room, Elton said later. About this 18-year-old kid who was dying, who should have been angry and bitter and afraid, and he wasn't. He was worried about other people. He was thinking about his legacy. He shook his head. And what was I doing? I had everything, health, wealth, fame, and I was throwing it all away. I was killing myself because I didn't think I was worth saving. He looked up. Ryan showed me I was wrong. He made me want to live, not just survive, but really live, to be someone worth knowing, someone who mattered. On July 29, 1990, Elton John got sober. He has never had a drink or a drug since. 2 years later, in 1992, he founded the Elton John AIDS Foundation. The organization started small, a few fundraisers, some grants to local organizations. But Elton threw himself into the work with the same intensity he'd once reserved for destruction. "This is what Ryan asked me to do," he said. "This is my promise." Over the next 3 decades, the Elton John AIDS Foundation would raise more than $600 million. It would fund treatment programs in 40 countries. It would provide education, prevention, and care to millions of people who would otherwise have died alone and forgotten. And every single day in meetings and galas and quiet moments alone, Elton John thought about a skinny kid from Indiana who had changed his life. In 1990, the year Ryan died, Congress passed the Ryan White Care Act. It was the largest federally funded program for people living with HIV/AIDS in the United States. It has been reauthorized 4 times and has provided care to millions. The act exists because of one boy's courage, because he refused to be silent, because he stood in front of cameras and told the world that he was human, that he deserved compassion, that fear was not an excuse for cruelty. Kokomo, Indiana, the town that tried to destroy Ryan White, eventually apologized. Schools across America now teach about Ryan's story. The hatred that once seemed so powerful has faded into shame. But the love remains. In Cicero, there is a museum dedicated to Ryan White. His red Chevy Citation is there, along with his letter jacket and his movie posters and all the small objects that made up a life cut too short. And in that museum, in a glass case, there is a photograph. It shows a skinny boy in a hospital bed holding hands with a man in a rhinestone jacket. They are both smiling. They are both, in their own ways, fighting for their lives. The caption beneath the photo reads, "Ryan White and Elton John, friends." Elton John is 78 years old now. He has been sober for 35 years. He is married to David Furnish. He has 2 sons, Zachary and Elijah, who call him Daddy and have never seen him drunk or high or lost. He has won every award there is to win: Grammy, Oscar, Tony, Emmy. He has been knighted by the Queen. He has sold more records than almost anyone in history. But when interviewers ask him about the most important moment of his life, he doesn't talk about the music. He doesn't talk about the fame or the money or the standing ovations. He talks about a hospital room in Indianapolis. He talks about a boy who taught him how to live. "Ryan gave me everything," Elton says. His voice is soft, even now. "He gave me purpose. He gave me sobriety. He gave me a reason to wake up in the morning." He pauses. "People think I saved him, that I was the famous person who swooped in and helped the sick boy." He shakes his head. "They have it backwards. Ryan saved me. He showed me what courage looked like. He showed me that one person, even a sick kid from Indiana, could change the world." He looks out the window at a world that Ryan White never got to see. "I miss him every day. I talk to him sometimes in my head. I tell him about my sons, about the foundation, about all the lives we've saved in his name. His eyes are wet, but he is smiling. And I think he'd be proud. I think he'd look at everything that's happened since he died and he'd say, 'Not bad, Elton. Not bad at all.'" The hospital room is empty now. The machines are silent. The flowers are gone. Ryan White has been dead for 35 years, but his voice still echoes. In the millions of people who are alive today because of AIDS research and treatment, in the children who go to school without fear, regardless of their illness, in the laws and policies and attitudes that have changed, slowly, painfully, but changed nonetheless, and in one man, a man in rhinestone jackets, a man who once had everything and nearly threw it all away, who made a promise in a hospital room and has spent the rest of his life keeping it. Don't let them forget, Ryan said. Elton never did.